Sons of Anarchy. Call it however you want, it has arguably brought more riders into the hobby than all Harley-Davidson commercials combined. It has made people fall in love with an idea of freedom. Freedom that only Harley can bring. Freedom that is being loudly announced anytime an old-school American bald eagle fires up to life, and freedom comes with a sound.
Hear that? Even if you're at the beginning of your two-wheel journey, you might recognize that sound, right? It's a Harley. Except, is it?
What if you want a Sportster but without all the drawbacks of the Sportster? A Sportster that doesn't average the weight of two fully grown cows, a Sportster that can overtake more than just a horse. Sportster that's actually good. Well, just like the Zero airplanes introduced in the Second World War, Japan had it covered.
This is a Suzuki Intruder VS800, but it's not your average Intruder. It's an Intruder that was brought to the scalpel in order to give it a more badass, more menacing look. It's a bobber. Despite this, you have to look at it for what it really is. It's a friendly motorcycle, really catered towards beginners, and it's a really good entryway into the whole cruiser scene. And it would be like that, except it has one major flaw.
But let's go for some basics. What exactly is this bike? Well, Suzuki decided to put an 800cc V-twin inside its low-hanging frame. I don't care how short you are, chances are you'll easily reach the ground. Now, 800cc for beginners sounds like overkill, but these are cruiser cubic centimeters. Basically, you take any cruiser, divide the cubic capacity by 2, and you get its standard equivalent. This is no more menacing than a Ninja 400. The power rating sits at a decent 60 HP, while all that grunt is put to the ground using shaft drive. This doesn't mean it's heavy though, clocking in at just about 200 kilograms dry.
In the cruiser scene, it doesn't really matter how unique a bike looks right out of the factory gates. It's what you do with it that really matters. And for that, the Intruder is a really cool blank slate that you can do a lot of customization to.
In our specific case, it is currently going through a teenage bobber phase with a cut rear fender, forward controls, drag bars and a matte black finish. It has also received the classic professional exhaust change, meaning that instead of the standard baffled pipes, it got two straight, fairly empty pipes. Where the shine of this cruiser really comes to life though, is the night. Sound aside, a little Japanese character does come out of the two exhausts at the rear. They are custom made to point up at the moon, inspired by the classic Bosozoku style from the 1950s. The rear cut fender serves a dual purpose. One is to give you a shower every time the road gets even mildly damp, and the other is to fully expose the rear and create the illusion of it being thicker than in reality.
You know, full Kardashian style. The original dual seat has been converted to a single unit since, let's be fair, you're not picking up any girls with it, mainly just boys that like the aesthetic.
The controls were moved up front in order to make sure that no shorty can steal the motorcycle, but also to give it a leaner look. And while at the subject of controls, the bars and razors were changed to a set of sportier, more leaned over drag bars.
To finish everything off, a matte black coat of paint was applied all over this to give it a more minimalistic and simplistic stealth look. You could say you're hard to see at night, but to be fair, even a deaf person could hear you coming on the city streets with this.
It's sunrise. The light starts touching the surface of the earth, and in it, you start to realize that the Intruder isn't just a show-off piece. It doesn't belong in an art collection, it belongs on the road. And here it feels incredibly light and flickable, traits inherited from its low center of gravity. Also, the steering radius is the best I've ever seen on a street motorcycle. All these combined make for a motorcycle that doesn't hustle in traffic, it glides through it, swiftly changing direction from left to right. Unfortunately, with time, you start to realize that maybe it's not all as perfect as it seems.
We consider Japanese engineering to be a golden standard, something that other manufacturers aspire towards. But I'm afraid that some of those engineers were a little bit hungover when they worked on the Intruder 800, when they put this steed back together.
First we have the battery placement, which is situated right under the seat and under the exhaust and right at the bottom of the motorcycle, which always makes it hard to remove it whenever you need it. Second, we have the suspension, which is comfortable, but it's maybe a bit too soft. Like the front forks is so soft that I actually managed to bottom it out while slightly braking over a speed bump. And then you have the brakes. The front is a disc brake and it works as a brake. It's not the best one out there, but it does do a job. But where it really falls down a bit is at the rear. It features a trusty, good old drum brake system. There's a reason why people don't use them anymore, and yeah, you can see it right here.
And then we get to the wiring. Sure, it's an old unit at this point, but this does not excuse some design flaws. It seems that the engineers were left with a bunch of cables that they decided to simply stuff together with a hammer underneath the seat. It's a real rat's nest underneath, and you don't have to be an electrical engineer to realize why that might not be a wise idea.
The sad reality with a lot of these Intruders is that they're in a bad state, not because of Suzuki itself, but because of the owners, and they do a lot of stuff to it that just this bike doesn't deserve such treatment. For example, this one came with a lengthened front fork. The 12-year-old me watching Orange County Choppers would have loved that, but the 24-year-old me now just hates the way this bike would handle.
Luckily, this specific one here was reverted back to stock. Another example of mindless modification lies in the speedo. It is there, it works, but check it from my point of view. Because the bars were relocated, it renders the speedometer pointless in anything under 70 kph. The bars are perfectly in my line of sight.
So officer, no, I swear, I genuinely didn't know how fast I was going.
It's a shame that a lot of these examples reach the hands of mindless teens who think bringing a hammer and an angle grinder to the party is all that's needed for making your bike custom. I'm not against customizing, but I am against doing it in such a way that the resulted bike is worse than the standard one. And that's unfortunately the case with a lot of the VS800s out there.
But let's cheer up a little. In the grand scheme of things, all of these issues aren't really that bad. Especially not when considering that this bike is 4 years older than myself. So if you manage to find a good example of this, you'll absolutely love it.
It's got enough power to have a little fun on some B-roads or just to cruise around on the highway, while also being incredibly forgiving with the frisky hand of a beginner.
The Intruder feels really light and handles really well, not just for the city, but also for some twistier turns, like this one. Really easy to ride, it's easy to understand how it works, even for someone who's at the beginning of their journey. You could argue that amongst its competitors, this Intruder truly is one of the most complete packages out there you can find.
Really, it's what a Harley Sportster should have been. It's better in almost any way, from its handling to its power and the weight. It's a Harley Sportster without the downfalls of a Sportster. It's a really cool bike, except for a lot of people, it does have one major flaw.